Eagles are 2-1. Phillies win the NL East for the first time in 13 years, and we're back. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Philly Sports Now, a Philly fan podcast. My name is Zach. With me is Andrew, and we're back to talk all things Philly sports. Now, it's hard not to jump on the Eagles. Philadelphia is an Eagles town. It's a football town, blah, blah, blah. But I got to do it. I'm switching to the Phillies, represented by my colors I'm wearing today. Now, if you're not watching on YouTube and you're listening on Spotify, I appreciate it as always, but consider subscribing on YouTube. Links somewhere. And I gotta go Phillies, man. Phillies win not only their playoff spot since we last talked, I believe, but also they win the NL East division title for the first time in 13 years. Now, if my math is correct, that last time it happened was the Dream Team, right?
Yeah, 2011. Yep.
Yeah.
Roy Halladay, Cliff
Now,
Lee,
they
Hamels.
didn't. That wasn't the right. They had a different nickname for that. Like, wasn't it? Or was that Dream Team?
Well, the Dream Team was the Eagles when
That's
Vince
what
Young
I
called us. Yeah.
yeah. No, what didn't we have a name for? Because 2011 was like the best roster the Phillies ever had, and then we blew
Yeah,
it
it was
first round.
102 wins, and yeah, we couldn't get out of the first round. In typical Philly
Anyway,
fashion.
that was the last time they won the division. I believe they had over 100 wins. Won't end up there for the Phillies this year, unfortunately, but we are still NL East champions. I mean, Andrew, I believe you kind of put it like the emotion into your text, so I'm gonna actually throw this at you to start first. But like, what's it feel like to have the title for the first time in 13 years for you as a fan?
Oh yeah, it's truly special. Some people are kind of just like, oh, we've been in the playoffs the last 2 or 3 years, But for me, like, I put this in our group chat, and it's half joking but half serious. Like, it's been so long that I wasn't even able to drive the last time we won the division. Like, I wasn't even 16 yet, and here we are now. I graduated from high school and college, and like that's how long it's been since this team has been able to crown themselves the champions of the NL East. So I get it. The last 2 years of the playoffs, obviously, 22, especially when you get to the World Series, was a fun ride. But this kind of shows where this franchise is at now, being back to where we were from those days. It's not, you scratch into the playoffs. It's no, you have a consistent team. You've consistently gotten to the playoffs. And that's what, to me at least, seeing the coolness from Middleton, having an owner that's ready to buy in and wants the trophy in Philly. Like, it's all special. And I think that's what makes this team fun is they're relating to the crowd or the fans and stuff. I mean, you look at this roster. I mean, obviously outside Schwarber, and Trey Turner, but like you look at these roster, obviously you have guys that have been around baseball for a while, but you don't have guys that have won championships. I mean, you look at Harper; he's still searching for his first. As good as Bryce Harper is in his baseball career, he doesn't have a World Series title. You look at Bryson Stott, obviously Alec Boehm, the young guys, they obviously haven't won one yet. JT, he's been around the league for a while, and especially as a catcher. I mean, you don't know how long he's got behind the plate. He wants that ring. Castellanos, who's been a fantastic player in his career, he doesn't have a title. Then you go look at all the pitchers. I mean, Aaron Nola's been here his whole career. Ranger Suarez. I mean, all these guys, they won it now. And I think they've gotten a taste of it the last 2 years. So it's cool to have that bond with these players. It's not like they're going for their fifth title or anything.
Speaking of, I'm gonna kind of throw a little bit of a monkey wrench in your statement there because I'm curious how you think. So obviously you have the hungry dogs on the team that haven't won, but what about people like Schwarber who have won with other teams but haven't won with this team? And you can see we talk about it all the time. Like it's just such a brotherhood this dugout, this clubhouse, right? So like what do you think it means to someone like Schwarber who has a ring but hasn't won with this crew and clearly wants to? Like, what do you think that driving factor is in comparison?
I think the driving factor is the guys he's with, the relationships he's created over the last few years. I mean, yeah, obviously, he's got one already, but I mean, he wants another one. He gets to talk to Harper every day. He gets to hang out with these guys. He knows the hungry feeling of getting here first, and I think, I mean, I'd have to remember which veterans would have been on that team with him in Chicago, but I mean, he knows what it felt like when he didn't have his first, and he was relying on those other veterans to get the job done. to help them win. So I think that's kind of where he gets to see it, is he gets to play the other factor. And I think for himself, it helps him being the leadoff hitter. He kind of sets the tone. He gets everybody going, and the leader he's shown in the locker room itself, to me, shows what it still means to him.
So looking ahead, the Phillies have taken their division, and not only that, they have guaranteed themselves thanks to a win over Chicago, and also Pirates getting a win over the Brewers. Crazy. It happened. I saw an interview where Marshman was watching the game while giving his post-game interview after they won against Chicago. It was really cool. It was a great clip. And yeah, but the Phillies have secured at least the second place spot, which secures their bye. So they have a bye over the first game, the wild card series. They will start in the NLDS, and man, things are getting real. Andrew, I don't know if you know, like timeline wise, I assume essentially we'll have next week off because
October
the
5th is the open.
October 5th. October 5th. Now, is that regardless if they have second or first place? Is that
Yep,
still in
yep.
contentions?
Everybody opens up October 5th in the NLDS. Just times won't be released till the series are set. But October 5th is our guaranteed first game.
So now pulling up the National League, I see here that the Dodgers are 95 and 64, and we are 94 and 65. So it's pretty much still neck and neck until the last game is done.
Yeah, so we got to be one game better than the Dodgers this weekend, which not off to a good start, down 4-0 already in the first. Um, but yeah, so we need to be one game better than the Dodgers because we need to find a way to just tie them because we have the tiebreaker over the Dodgers.
Man,
So
so
we
they don't even need a whole half game over. They just need to tie them.
Yes, and Dodgers just clinched their division last night, so you expect today to be their quote unquote hangover game. So this was the one you'd hope the Phillies win and the Dodgers lose to make up that game. But again, the bats are gonna have to get going if we want to do that.
So as of right now, in second place, we would face the winner of either the Brewers or the Arizona Diamondbacks, with the Dodgers facing off against the winner of either the Mets or the Padres. First of all, I know we already talked about it on the last episode, I'm fairly sure, but crazy how the Mets are beating out the Braves right now for the playoffs. I just we have had to fight hard over the Braves the past 2 years in the postseason, and this year they're not even in it. Like that's just such a weird concept for me.
Yeah, no, without question. I do feel bad for those two teams, whichever
Well,
team
I don't know if I'd say
ends
that.
up punching it in with the situation that they have to go through here in the final week of the season. Um, with the hurricane happening in the right now down in the Atlanta area, they had to postpone both games.
Okay.
So
Well,
the
Andrew
rest of
made
that,
it more personal than I expected. When you said I
not
feel
person,
bad,
but we got to let me
I
finish.
not
So,
personal, sorry. Like emotional on a humane level that makes you
well,
like
not, I mean, they're all fine, right? I mean, right now, I'm saying like, so they had to postpone the rest of that series. So now they got to play a doubleheader on Monday, and whichever team ends up winning that series, because only a game separates those two. So whichever team has to, or not has to, whatever team wins and gets into the playoffs, they have to use all their best pitchers Monday to get in with the bullpen, and then turn around and play on Tuesday to start that playoff series with San Diego. So they're already going to be at a disadvantage to start that series, let alone all the travel and stuff too, to go from wherever they play this weekend to go to Atlanta on Monday and then travel to San Diego and get ready for a game on Tuesday. So
now.
obviously nobody could have, I mean, no one, when the schedule was made, predicted what's going to happen at the end of the season, but it is stink for those two teams, whoever's got to
Of course.
deal with that.
I was listening to the Anthony Gargano show on PHLY, and they were talking about how, regardless of if it is the Braves or the Mets, they're also not very scared of them and fairly convinced the Padres are going to win no matter who they play. Now, the Padres have been in the postseason the past 2 years as well, right there with the Phillies, if I remember correctly, and have been kind of not, I would say, not pleasant. It's been not pleasant. Plenty of fan interactions I still remember for sure. Um, Now that being said, on the other side of the bracket where we currently are, you have the Arizona Diamondbacks. Uh, on a mentality level, I don't have any beef with Brewers fans, but man, Diamondbacks and Diamondbacks fans, they are a threat from last year that is just waiting to happen. Now, Andrew, I've heard some back and forth with people online in group chat, but like basically, which bracket do you prefer? Now, I know first place is going to get you World Series home field advantage. So, just that aside, basing it on the potential adversary in the bracket, which place would you want right now?
I've never. If you had a lean, obviously, yeah, you're gonna choose the Brewers and Diamondbacks because the Padres are probably one of the hottest teams in baseball. They're the best team out of those three, or out of those four you can face, um, from a top to bottom standpoint. So if you're gonna go off that, I'd go Arizona, Milwaukee. What happened last year? Whatever. They beat you in a series. It took 7 games. It happens. You can't sit here in fear of them. You're gonna have to overcome the team eventually, anyway. And that's leads me to my next point: is I've never been, you know, pick your bracket, right? It doesn't matter, right? Because listen,
It
you're gonna have to
shouldn't.
face if the Padres win, right? If they're as hot as scary as everybody says, you're gonna have to face them in the playoffs at some point. You're gonna have to face them in the championship series. And if they can't beat the Dodgers are just as good, if not better. So that means the Dodgers are gonna be a tough game anyway. So it goes hand in hand. But yeah, if you're going off strictly roster, obviously, yeah, we're gonna sit here and say the Diamondbacks and Brewers on paper, they're a little bit easier matchup. But when it's all said and done, I mean, again, you saw what they did last year. Baseball's all about who gets hot.
So I have a theoretical, but I'm going to ask you a question beforehand to kind of put it into context. Regardless of placing right now, like just you have to face one or the other. Who would you rather face? The Padres or the Dodgers? If you only had to do one, which one would you rather?
It's gonna catch people surprised, but I'd rather the Dodgers.
You'd rather the Dodgers. So your point stands because it doesn't matter. Like you'd have to fight the Dodgers anyway. You'd have to fight the Padres anyway, kind of a thing. So, but what I was gonna say was because of the bye, I think the argument people have makes sense to me strictly because of the bye. So while it lets you guys rest, which the Phillies desperately need because Harper doesn't take breaks and he does, he really should, as well as Casty, who has like never missed a game or whatever. But like my whole point being that they're all on a mandatory bye, right? So I'm not saying we're going to be bad after the bye, but I do think there's something to be said about essentially heating up, warming up, and I would rather face not the Padres or the Dodgers in that first round to warm up and then go fight whoever you have to face afterwards. I agree with you when it comes to the end all be all, like they're gonna have to play each other. And I get your point, but I think the buy kind of changes the when and the where. Like again, I don't think it's going to take a whole series to heat up, but those first 2 games, I would say you might need a little swing of the bat here and there to kind of get ready, and that's why I could kind of see the argument being made. So all that to say, do you think the bracket location is worth not having World Series home field advantage?
No, no, and
Which I would agree with you.
which is also funny to say, because I've heard and seen a lot of people complaining about the quote unquote bad stretch the Phillies had, cost them the 1 seed and stuff. I think the most important thing was getting that bye. That was the most important thing. To me, the 1 and 2 seeds don't differentiate too much. And I'm not trying to say home field doesn't matter. I'm not trying to say, none of that matters. My point is, right, we sit here and we talk about the fear in the Diamondbacks, right? Well, guess what? Nobody picked Arizona to go to the World Series last year going into the playoffs. They got hot at the right time, right? So that's my point about you can pick and choose the matchups. Same thing with the home field advantage. Like, obviously, would I rather the Phillies play at home? Obviously, no one's going to say we don't, right? We sit here and talk about how important it is. Well, let's look at the last 2 years. We lost game 6 and 7 to Arizona in Philadelphia. We lost, we went up in the World Series 2-1 and lost 2 games in Philadelphia to the Astros in the World Series. So, with that being said, I think we accomplished the 2 most important things going into the playoffs, and that was 1, getting the division, and then 2, clinching the bye. And
Essentially, in your eyes, everything else from here is just icing on the cake. You don't need it. It's fine.
correct,
It's going to be
correct.
delicious.
Now it's just you go out there and play baseball. Now it's you just go, you go against whoever's on the other side, and you go. Because again, if you're going on paper,
Yeah.
I think the Phillies are the best team in the National League on paper.
Man,
Uh,
waiting until October 5th for that next game is going to be tough. It's going to be
yeah.
tough.
It's gonna be weird too, just because the last 2 years, not getting the bye,
Yeah.
watching the playoffs start Tuesday through Thursday, and then having to wait through that and get to Saturday, yeah, as well. Um, which and that too, like we talk about getting picking your matchups. That's one thing the Phillies have to take advantage of. Is we talk about all year how strong our pitching's been. These teams, that's what you really want out of this week. Is you want those series to go a full 3 games, make them burn their pitchers, make
Yeah.
them use them, and then you have the advantage of having your ace on game one against. I mean, at that point, I don't know. You might be able to force a guy in there on short rest or start with your 3 guy if you're whoever ends up sneaking out of that round. So that's why that buy is important. Not only do you get your guys rest, but also because now you get to set up your ace against their non-ace.
Yeah, I mean, it just guarantees you have your ace ready for
Yeah,
the more important game. And to your point, like the wild card, like you're fighting for your life right there. And so wild card is a 3 game series, right? NLDS is 5, and then it's
correct.
7 for the CS.
Yep, correct.
Right. So it's man, it's crazy, but yeah, I definitely hope for a 3 game series for the wild card weekend. And man, is it weird I want the Brewers like over the Diamondbacks? Like even though I think the Brewers are the better team, I am more or less scared of the Diamondbacks because of last year. And even like earlier this year. Like they were a tough team to face in the season.
Yeah, I'd much rather Arizona.
That's
Brewers
Andrew was the logical one, so I would stick with that.
Brewers got solid pitching. They got one of the best bullpens, which hurts, which is important in baseball. Devin Williams is one of the most lockdown closers. So if you go against him late in the game, that's going to be tough. We've seen Hoskins perform in the playoffs in big moments. Big home run against Atlanta, so he's not afraid of the moment. And how much he's going to love trying to knock off the Phillies who didn't re-sign him. Not that he's anything against us; he's a free agent, but Harper. I mean, in reality, right? Harper could have went back to right field. We could have kept Hoskins at first.
Yeah.
Harper chose first, which essentially kicked out Hoskins. Again, I'm not saying that bad blood. I'm just saying like that's the reality of the situation. So I mean, while they're still friends and all, I mean, Hoskins is going to want to prove a point there.
Yeah,
So
like it's not like Stephon
I
Diggs and
yeah,
Buffalo,
yeah,
right? It's mended, but you still have a little. It's still personal. Is really what it
yeah,
comes out to.
yeah. So like, if you're asking me, give me Arizona. Their pitching's not as strong. Their hitting's not as strong. I think you have a good chance. And again, especially in a 5 game series where you're giving me our top 2 aces,
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that chance.
All right. Well, we will be meeting. Excuse me, man. I am stumbling all over. Friday night's a tough night for me, but we will be meeting once again before the Phillies actually play on October 5th. So we will actually have an updated podcast. So again, make sure to subscribe or follow. But we will have our thoughts on who the actual opponent is. Probably, I guess. Maybe it depends. Maybe we'll wait until that. We'll talk off air. Anyway, moving on to who's Andrew's stressed for, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, oh man, it is a stressful time to be an Eagles fan. And like, it's funny when you think about like losing time for Eagles, and it's like, are you really stressed? You're just angry or disappointed. But right now, when you have arguably, again, just like the Phillies, one of the best, most talented Eagles teams we've ever seen, and yet we're having these tough wins, very reminiscent of last year. But the Eagles pull away a win 15-12 against the New Orleans Saints. Now, there's a lot of things to be said about this game. The Saints, we held to 12 points, who the week before scored 40 plus on the Dallas Cowboys, who was hyped up to be the best defense in the NFC. Let's be straight about that right away. Right away. The Dallas Cowboys, who is absolutely they're dead. They're dead. I'm just gonna say it now, they're dead. But the Dallas Cowboys just let the Saints walk all over them, and we were able to hold them to 12. I think that's huge for the defense. I think there was a lot of progress made from the loss against the Atlanta Falcons to the win against the New Orleans Saints on the defensive side. Now, when it comes to the offense, this is why it's so stressful. And if you're an Eagles fan, you know all about this already. We came out of a win, and people are still asking for Nick Sirianni's head on a spike. It's a tough time for him. It is absolutely a tough time for Nick Sirianni. I I can't really defend him right now. And that's the thing that kind of pisses me off. Nick has the record. Nick is a winning coach, obviously in Philadelphia. We're the first team he's ever been a head coach for, but he's a very, very, very overall winning coach. He went to a Super Bowl. It, it's, I still disagree with people asking him to resign, essentially, to be fired. But right now, like just looking at the Saints game, God damn, did he screw that up big time? That was a bad game. That was just his decision making was really bad. And something I heard on the radio that I agree with, I I think Nick is being not purposefully stubborn, but I think he's trying to stand out because even he isn't quite as involved as he wants to be. Now, I don't know if we ever knew how involved he was Super Bowl year versus now, but I think that's the big issue. Is I think Nick as the head coach is trying to play hero ball. We're all talking about how Hurts needs to stop trying to play hero ball, how that's what cost Carson Wentz his job, whereas Nick Sirianni is also making these mistakes by going forward on forward. And you're seeing that, right? I think the best example is that him going for it before halftime in this game, there was 14, 15 seconds left on the clock. And it was 4th and 3. It was like a 30-ish yard field goal at most. And he goes for it. And man, I was so frustrated with that. I think they had a timeout. So let's say theoretically they get the first down. I forget what the play was. It was I want to say it was the fake tush push. The setup for the tush push. They do the handoff to Barkley, and then he doesn't get it. Now let's say he gets that. Again, 14 seconds left on the clock. Probably goes down to at least, let's say, 9 at worst seconds left on the clock. So now you have 9 seconds on the clock and one play left, a first down. But so what? You still have to make a 20-yard pass for a touchdown. So in that situation, when you were only down by 3, why not just take the 3 and tie it? And I think that play, like everything else aside, that play is the problem. And that's what I think we need to talk about today. Andrew, coming off of this win, were you as questionable as I am, as the fans are? Are you more secure? Obviously, we're happy we won, but like, how happy are you?
I'm happy. I think there's a lot of overreactions. I think it's similar to the Phillies. When things aren't going the way fans want it to be perfect as can be, a lot of people are overreacting. I think. Listen, do I want the points? Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say I would go for it. I will gladly admit too. I would rather him kick the field goal. We also got to tell him how it is. He's not. He's aggressive. There's a reason why every time it's 4th down in that spot, we're all texting each other. I hope he takes the points. Let's pray he takes the points, right? It's because we know how aggressive he is. He's not doing it to show anybody up. He's not doing it to try to outsmart anybody. He's not trying. He's not doing it to. He's not trying to do it to show that he still has face on this team. I mean, he's the guy. They know their role. If he was unhappy with the situation with having to bring in 2 new coordinators and stuff, he wouldn't be back here. You saw that, right? With Doug Peterson, when he didn't like the 2 coordinators, Doug Peterson left, right? He got fired. I mean, I think Sirianni kind of realized what the situation was. That's just who he is. And it's not going to change. Like as much as we wanted to take the points, it's something that, and yes, it's going to be frustrating in the moment, but it's the way he is. It's going to win you some games. It's going to cost you some games, right? It's just the reality of the situation. It's easier to said when done too, to sit here and say it didn't work, right? But that's where I am. That's the only thing I have issue with him with. Like I think everything else, right? I mean, you take out the rest of that offense. I mean, we know the numbers when Lane Johnson doesn't play. He lives that game throwing up with a concussion. You lose your right tackle. Sorry, Lane Johnson is the right tackle. You use your right guard, the guy next to him. So you lose your whole right side of that offensive line. You're already playing without A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith gets absolutely smoked going across the field. He's got a concussion now. So, yes, as it is easy to sit here and point to the coaches, right? Because that's what everybody wants to do. I'm tired of blaming the coaches. I'm sitting here saying it's time to look at the players, right, and see where they're at. When do you start calling them out? We want to sit here and defend Hurts and defend all the guys. Well, I mean, let's look at it, right? We sit here and blame Sirianni for that field goal. Well, guess what? If Hurts doesn't throw an interception in the end zone, you're going 7 points there. You're possibly kicking the field goal in that situation. You're up 7-3. Nobody cares about that field goal as much anymore because you're winning. You look at the same thing. Hurts, he fumbles the ball in the Saints territory as well on the 30-yard line. There's another 7 points. There's another potential 3 points if he takes the sack. And yes, I'm going to bring it up since we didn't have a chance to talk about the Falcons game. Everyone's to pinpoint that those situations as well. It's the same thing. If the players execute, if Saquon Barkley catches the ball, we're sitting here 3-0. So as everyone's so easy to point to the coaches, it's the coach's fault. It's the coach's fault. It's the coordinator's fault. If these players perform and execute the plays that these coaches put them in position to do, we're sitting here 3-0.
Yeah, but I see. You threw a lot of things in there. I disagree and
I'm
agree
just
with.
sick of the coach. I'm just sick of the coach hate.
I agree with you, dude, and we've been on the same train here this whole time. Like I am also sick of the coach hate, but I think there's a difference between blaming the coach unnecessarily and also seeing unintelligent plays. Because oh man, which play did you talk about with the Saints that I disagreed with? I don't know,
The
but
The Saints one. I just mentioned the interception and fumble.
well, okay, so that's my point of like that's where it is to blame the players because Hurts truly has to get better. Like I actually almost got in a Twitter argument with this guy, random guy. So no shout out for you, dude. But like I almost got in a Twitter argument because I was like pissed and I said how Hurts needs to do better. I think I said he was the weakest link, which I still stand by. The team is so outstanding that Hurts is the weakest link. He's by no means a bad quarterback, but he's not elite right now. And he's still heating up. And you can't have that going into week 4. Like, that's just not how that works. And so when I say Hurts isn't doing well, I stand by that, right? But that being said, because I agree Hurts needs to do better and learn. The turnovers are terrible. Like they are I don't know if it's the worst in the league, but he's literally getting at least 2 turnovers a game, and we've only played 3 games. Like it's insane. But that being said, the Atlanta thing, I still heavily disagree with. In my opinion, if Hurts decides to throw it to Barkley, Barkley is an elite player. It is like if that's an RPO move, like I get it. But in a 4th and I think it was 3rd situation, you should be running Barkley if you're gonna like use it. Like that's I still think this team just doesn't know its identity. It doesn't know where it lies. And I think that's the problem. And like I say, you should be running Barkley, but I was also thinking about in the second quarter, the 4th down situation I just talked about against the Saints, they ran Barkley, right? Instead of kicking the field goal. But it's these situations don't feel like they're intelligent decisions. You talked about Sirianni being aggressive. I'm not against being aggressive. I'm not against going forward on 4th down. But what I am against is stupid mistakes because they're bad decisions. Instead of throwing it to Barkley on 4th down, run it to Barkley on 4th down. Instead of trying to get one more play in the second quarter of the Saints games, kick the field goal, tie it, and go into the half.
Yeah, but it's easy for us to say it, but you run the ball. Atlanta, I don't know if you're referring to the Atlanta one where
I
it
quickly
stopped the
talked about
clock,
everything, so go ahead.
but the Barkley one, they know you're going to run the ball. They're going to stuff it. They're just going to stuff that, and then you're kicking the field goal anyway, giving them the ball back. So you outsmarted him. You got open a player, and then the guy you paid all that money to the offseason dropped the ball.
So I know Andrew seems to be very heavily on the players need to play situation, which is not wrong. And I think that the players need to step it up a lot. Now that being said, do you think that the amount of injuries we're already sustaining is problematic in the sense that it's affecting the chemistry being made? And I say that because Barkley, while he seems to be a stud, right? Wrong, is a stud, but like seems to already be going off with the Eagles. He's still vibing. He's still meshing with this brand new team for him. However, we now have so many people out that the game plan is changing constantly. What do you think? How do you think that impacts the team still kind of building its personality, so to speak? And also, is it I don't know. I almost feel like we're hitting a brick wall we can't overpass.
No, I'm not worried about the chemistry aspect of it. I think these guys, I mean, they're still going to practices. It's not like they're not involved. You saw AJ Brown travel with the team last week. He's still there. I'd be a little more worried if a lot of these guys were with us last year, but the guys hurt are already guys that know hurts. They already
Sure.
have the timing down from last year. And AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson. Um, it's like if, for example, right, if it's Barkley instead of AJ Brown, then yeah, maybe because they haven't worked a while with each other. But I think with them still being involved in practices and everything, they're still getting the scheme down and everything. They're still doing all that side. So I think long term, this team's fine. Usually, I hate the early buy, but I think this early buy helps us actually for
Definitely.
this year. I would expect AJ Brown and Smith back after that week 5 bye. So that's why last week's win was so huge too. At minimum, you're 500 going into it. Obviously, you want to find a way to get out of Tampa Bay with the win. But regardless, worst case is you're 500. Best case is you're 3-1. You regroup, get healthy, and hopefully take care of business there after the bye. And anything maybe those guys have lost in this past week or two, depending on which player, you get to remake up for in that bye week. There's no way they're going to please every single fan. There's no way they're going to please every single media player with the touches with this group, right? Let's hypothetically say, week 6 after the bye week, Smith and Brown are back. Let's say they give the ball to Goddard 12 times. Brown gets it 7 times. Smith gets it 6 times. The Eagles lose by 3 points. Everyone's going to hate that A.J. Brown didn't have more touches than Dallas Goddard. Let's be real, right? Um, let's say Barkley runs the ball 25 times. Brown only has 3 catches. Smith has 8 catches, right? The storyline is going to be how did Brown only have 3 catches? Let's say Goddard has 10 catches. Brown has 10 catches. Smith has 12 catches. Barkley only has 15 carries. It's going to be how did Barkley not run the ball 20 times?
You're saying we're always gonna hindsight 2020 kind of a thing.
This team is so stacked. It's impossible to get every single one of these guys the ball enough time to please every single fan, right?
Sure.
You might be a bigger Devontae Smith fan, and I might be a bigger AJ Brown fan, so I'm going to want Brown to get the ball more. Dad might be a bigger Barkley fan. He's going Barkley, right? So it in reality, and that's why I go back to in terms of that, it's a lose lose for the coaches. In the sense of they can't make anybody happy. Unless you win the Super Bowl, right? In terms of the guys touching the ball, and that's just the reality of the situation, right? Um, Even in wins, right? It's where's Goddard been? But in reality, you only snapping the ball so many times, and in reality, I know this sounds like coaches talk, but it's true. You hear the coaches talk about after the game, right? You go in with a game plan, and you might have 20 plays for one guy, 10 plays for another guy, right? But guess what? I'm not trying to keep pinpointing everything back to Hurts' turnovers, but right, if he turns the ball over at the 50-yard line, that's 4 more plays that you might have 2 more runs drawn up, right? And I'll just go back to the Saints because our last opponent in Saints territory, you might have 2 or 3 more runs drawn up where Hurts just cost Barkley those 2 carries, right? Or vice versa, right? He might have 2 tight end screens to Goddard drawn up. Oh, well, that turnover cost him that. Or, a big play to, that big Barkley run, that 65-yard touchdown run, right? Guess what? That's less plays for that drive. So it's tough to kind of sit here. And again, it's easy for us in-game talk to be different than, right, when you look at it after the game, right? It's easy to in-game. Like, again, that's why I go back to that aggressive fourth down calls. Yeah, obviously we all want the points, but in reality, that's just the way the coach is. And I don't know. It's tough to sit here and say anything about the touches for me because there's so many teams wishing that they had Devontae Smith as their one, or they wish they had Brown as their one, and you only get enough plays in a game, so it's tough to give them all their 20 touches.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think, I mean, I agree with you to a certain extent, but I think that the argument that he is who he is for the coaching is not an acceptable argument. When the play calling, and that could be Kellen Moore, but
Oh, let me cut you off real quick. Let me cut you off. It's not acceptable when it doesn't work. Doug
right, but
Peterson is
that's my point. The
no,
past
no,
two weeks,
Doug
real
Peterson.
quick.
Doug Peterson is praised for it because of the Philly. Imagine if that Philly doesn't work. It's turnover on downs, and the Eagles lose by 3 points.
Yes, but
Doug Peterson is crushed. No, right now Doug Peterson is a genius because the players executed the play because they had the open guy, and it worked.
But that Philly was also executed because Foles called it. And I don't know if we do or don't trust Hurts enough to make that call, but I guess that's the issue. I guess that really is how much control does Hurts have in this team is an issue.
We don't know who calls it.
We don't know anything. Is a very fact.
We all thought Doug Peterson called that play until it came out, right?
Yep.
But guess what? The coach can overrule anything.
Of course.
So he could have said, no, not in this spot, Nick. We're going to go with the field goal. No, we're going to go with the traditional run to LeGarrette Blount. No, he said, okay, go for it. So for all we know, Kellen Moore could be the one being, all right, we're going to go for it here. And Sirianni's like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah. I don't know, dude. I don't know. And I'm not blaming Sirianni over Moore over Hurts. I think the three of them are to blame right now. I don't blame Barkley for that drop pass. I think that's absurd. I think he's a running back. You should have ran him or passed it to Smith. Like, I get I just don't agree with blaming Barkley in that situation. He needs to catch the ball. Literally, it's a drop ball. 100%. But he's also your running back. Run the damn ball.
Yeah, part of the job of running back is to block and catch.
I know. I'm not gonna agree. I think the plays are in the hot seat. Whether it's Hurts executing them, whether it's the players executing them, or whether it's the coaching staff. The plays themselves are in the hot seat because we should be 3-0. And we should have won the last game by more than 3 points. That's why.
But I disagree. You started this off by saying how hot of a team the Saints were. You went into the game as an underdog, so to say we should win by more than 3 points. I mean, you went and faced a solid team, and then going back to, again, for me at least, right? As a coach, I want to see them make what is their job as a coach, right? There is the draw up a play, call a play that has the guys open to the best of their ability to execute the play. That's exactly what Kellen Moore and the offense did. They drew up a play that had the guys open, and all they had to do was catch the ball. You have a first down, and because besides the fact, the other thing was they had 2 things there is the play call. If Barkley isn't open, Hurts takes a 2-yard stack, and it's just as good as a run. The clock continues to go, and then you kick the field goal and blah, blah, blah. But no, they had the perfect play call. He was open. He dropped the ball. That's number one. Number 2, the defense let the other team go down the field in a minute 30. Like that's you can't let that happen. Again, that's that's on the players. Like, how do you let that happen if you're the player? Like, you can't let that happen.
I know, dude. I know. I
And
look.
again, don't get me wrong. I want the points as much. And don't get me wrong. I was complaining just as much as the next person, right? When he doesn't, you can ask my roommate when it didn't happen that Sirianni didn't take the points. I'm just saying, like, unfortunately, that's his flaw in coaching. Is he's gonna be that aggressive? He's not. That's all I'm trying to say here is, and that's the only thing I really can criticize Nick for, is his aggressiveness. Because you even brought it up. In the end, he took us to the Super Bowl. His win percentage is fantastic. The players continue to talk highly on him,
That's what I've been waiting to add to this
Especially
conversation.
Jason Kelsey. He just got on there and talked about it this week. So the only flaw I truly see in Nick is how aggressive he can be.
And yeah, dude, I've been waiting to say that too. Is I don't think players are going to come out and attack him, but like they have been truly not just defensive, but like rallying, like for Doug Peterson
Yeah.
or for Nick Sirianni. But
Yeah.
I'm not calling for his head. I'm calling for just live and learn. I'm calling for smarts, man. That's what like uh, I truly I think whoa, I almost dropped my open water. I think that a lot of the issue comes from I think the coaching staff is letting the players do a lot more than we think. I think that's what's happening. And my theory to that starts with Sirianni having Hurts do like post game talks with the team, kind of a thing. I truly think that Hurts is almost a coach at a certain degree, and I think Hurts is taking a lot on his plate. And I think they're trying this out. I don't think it's any one person's idea. I think it's the players are very hands on. That being said, you gotta be smarter. And maybe it's the rust. Maybe we're still working through that rust. I think once we get back from this bye, the excuse of we're trying to get things figured out just does not work anymore. Hurts has to be 100%. We have to be able to use our receivers correctly. We have to use Goddard correctly. We have to use Barkley correctly. And that's kind of where I'm at. Um, let's move on. Let's move on. Let's kind of wrap things up here. Eagles going up against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, for starters, as we've pointed out already, they're 2-1. Both teams actually are 2-1. If we come out of this with a loss and we're 2-2 going to the bye, I'm not up in arms. I didn't expect to win against the Saints and was hoping to win against the Bucks. But that being said, I think this is a winnable game. Even though we're away, even though it's in dog shit Florida, aka Tampa Bay, I think we should be able to win this game. I don't think we do because I don't think we're lucky enough to get back-to-back wins right now. I just don't think we win. I don't think we're gonna win this game. I think it is a winnable game. But Baker's hot right now. The Bucks are not they're not looking bad. I don't know. Andrew, what do you think going in this game?
Yeah, this is going to be one of the toughest games to predict all season, and I say that because uh, I mean, yeah, it's a tough game to read. You're without Devontae Smith. You're without uh
Brown practice apparently.
yeah, but I'd be surprised.
I don't think he should play, to be honest. Like I'd rather him rest again, but he practiced. They might feel desperate enough to play him because Smith is out. And
I think
Covey's out too, right?
yeah.
That's
So there's a lot of question marks. You lose your punt returner, so we'll see how a new guy back there does. The biggest thing is just don't fumble the ball. Obviously, if you have to call a fair catch every time, just call a fair catch every time. Um, that's an underrated one, just because obviously we look at them trying to implement Covey the last few weeks in the offense with the absence of Brown and such. So that big one right there is he's been such a good punt returner for us the last 2 years. This is third year. But yeah, we don't know about Lane Johnson yet. I mean, obviously that takes a big hit if he can't go, which
he
I'm
can't
assuming
play.
he's not going to be able to go.
Can't play.
I just thought it was weird. Him and Smith got a concussion in the same game. and Smith was ruled out today, but not Johnson. So that means Johnson's a little healthier than Smith. I mean,
Which is
again, I'm not.
insane because he's the one that threw up. Like
Yeah,
that's not a like, oh, I'm fine throw up from a when you do that because of a concussion, that's a nervous, like, not nervous, you're nervous. Nervous as in your nervous system
yeah,
reacting incorrectly to a situation.
yeah. So with all that being said, I mean, yeah, it's still definitely a winnable game. They're dealing with their fair share of injuries. Their best receiver, Mike Evans, might not go. He's been questionable and limited all week at practice, so we'll see if he plays. So it could balance out a little bit. As you mentioned, I mean, we talk about the Phillies and Arizona. This is kind of that game for me with the Eagles. If there's a team you want to talk about that's always had our number the last few years, I mean, you look at Hurts that year, last year Brady blew us out in the playoff game. That first year of Hurts. We look at obviously last year, you go down there and get blown out in a playoff game. So this Tampa team has had Hurts' number. So we'll see what Eagles team is able to show up. I mean, obviously, it's a revenge game for this Eagles team, and we'll see what happens. I think it's definitely winnable. I don't trust Baker. I think he can make. He's been sacked a lot the last few games. So if our defensive line puts the pressure and plays like we did last week, I think you can cause enough headache there, and force the Tampa Bay Buccaneers into some turnovers. I think that's how you're gonna have to win this game. Don't get me wrong. I think the defense overall this year has played fairly well, um, but I think you can create a little bit more there in the turnover margin. And I think Mitchell gets his first interception this weekend. Um, First NFL interception as a rookie this weekend. He's been playing fantastic. A lot of breakups. He's just missing those passes. So I think we're able to get to Baker a little bit. And I think it's similar to the Saints game. You win a low scoring game.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll come back next week. Essentially, we'll have an Eagles versus Buccaneers post game for you. There won't be a week 5 game, so we won't have any pregame next week, but we will be Philliesing it up next week. Andrew, anything else you want to talk about before we get going here?
Congrats to Mitchcott for scoring his preseason, but scoring his first goal with the Flyers. I
You
know we're
know,
all
I've been
excited for
getting
him.
I've been getting my Flyers notifications. I was like, no way, we're gonna talk Flyers. He did it. He brought up
I
the
just had to give
Flyers.
I just had to give him a shout out. He got his it's preseason, but we're all excited for the young kid to come over this year and get some action. So even though it's preseason, it's cool. He's able to get his first goal there, and yeah, I mean, I know a lot of that's exciting for them, and hopefully they can get going. But season's only a few weeks away. So.
You're right. October is the best month for sports. Everything happens. NBA's preseason in October, I believe, or is it full season starts in it?
You get yeah, beginning's preseason. I think by a week, I think it's the week before Halloween is usually when NBA starts, and I think this end
So
of the second week is NHL.
I mean, there's no guarantee your baseball team is going to be playing at the same time, but there is a guarantee for 1 week every sport has a regular season or postseason game happening, and it's October's the greatest month of the year, is what sports fans have to think. It's a law.
If you're going strictly month, maybe. I love the late winter, early spring time period because you have the end of the Super Bowl leading into the March Madness, then opening day for baseball, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs.
Well, that's what I would argue. March is maybe the biggest month in sports because of March Madness plus actual sports happening as well, like
And
professional sports.
I will give the Masters their shout out, even though I don't really watch golf. But if we have any Masters listeners, they'll get angry if you don't at least mention that because
When
that's
is
very
that? I don't even know when the Masters is.
it's always the weekend after the March Madness championship.
It's
So
just the most hungover decision I've ever heard. Like, oh my God, March Madness is over. What are we gonna do? I don't know. I guess I'll sit on the couch and watch golf. And this coming from someone who has started golfing. Like, come on, that's just silly.
I even started playing golf, not watching
It's true. It's
golf.
true. All right, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Philly Sports Now, a Philly fan podcast. You can find us on all the things, links, everything below. We appreciate you for listening all the way through. If you're on Spotify, we're losing Andrew. It's all right. We're wrapping it up. But if you're listening on Spotify, make sure to share it. If you're not subscribed on YouTube, go to the Philly Gamer on YouTube to subscribe and get these videos moving forward. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Andrew, you make the decision. Who are we cheering for at the end of this one?
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell, folks. Good night.
Go